People have read it who ran away as young kids and never went back. What's your story? My sister at age 16 did so after a long, drawn out problem with my father. My GF and I got to see it all go down. Not fun. That is a longer story with her mother first, but there was discord at the house. She is currently a junior, making excellent grades, living in a trailer, but thriving. I've tried talking to both sides, but they are both stubborn and unrelenting for different reasons. She marches to the beat of her own drum, and is a rebel for someone else in charge other than her. My mom went to prison. My father was already out of the picture and my stepfather on some subconscious level resented us. If he hadn't taken us we would have gone back to foster care. A little while later he started dating a new woman and she couldn't comprehend why she had to deal with kids that weren't hers and weren't his. She was terrible to us and I left before there was another chance to have another parent figure abandon me. It was probably the best and worst decision I've ever made in my life. Eventually things panned out and I got my crap together. Most all of these stories are going to end with everything working out. I mean, they either went back or never made it to a point where they have the privilege of using Reddit. But the serious stories on here are damn interesting and a little inspiring. That is the huge problems with threads like this. Most of the time, it does not work out in the end. I am from Ohio and one day in late August at age 15 I got in my car, which I bought with money saved from a part-time job at a grocery store. No license, no more than $100 and nowhere to go. I just left. I wasn't currently abused and I have a mom and stepdad I love dearly, but they didn't understand me. I was sexually abused by my father from age 7-9 when I got my first period and I was never normal after that, but that's a different story. The day I left I got in a small argument with my stepdad and when I left I told him I was never coming back. Anyway I drove about an hour from my home and 30 minutes from my school and ended up in a park. It was a hippie kind of park sort of attached to Nelson Ledges, a place where I used to do some crazy gigolo thing at the time. The nice old man that ran the park let me camp there in my car. I turned 16 shortly after and got a decent job as a prep cook and made enough money to get an apartment in a not so nice part of town, closer to my school. And you know, with running water, it was above a M-lab, so eventually I started getting really sick. I would spend most my day at school in the nurse's office. Eventually after talking with the school nurse, a very understanding younger lady, she agreed to help me get things in order. She helped me get as emancipated as you can in Ohio, helped me get on a school food program and would listen to me when I become very overwhelmed. Eventually it was winter and I left the M-lab apartment, sleeping in my car once again. I was dumb and got a dog while I had a place of my own. But she was the most perfect dog ever and we become roommates in my car. As an adult I now know you shouldn't just leave your 1996 Chevy Cavalier just running all the time. Apparently you'll die and so will the car. So a full winter of sleeping in Walmart parking lots and parked on the side of the road with just my dog and a bunch of blankets gave me enough time to get my money in order to live at a better crappy apartment. It was hard being under 18 with a dog and no current residence to rent an apartment. I moved maybe 9 times before I was 18. I don't ever regret leaving. I know I put myself in some bad situations considering I was a girl, alone, and vulnerable most of the time. I called my mom about once a week after the initial first 2 weeks, and now we have a great relationship. I think me leaving let my mom and stepdad live the lives they wanted. I always got in the way, and I got to live the life I wanted. I am now 24, still have my first dog and 3 rescues. I have a good job, own my own house so I'll never have to live in my car again. I am currently on break at work on my mobile. So sorry about everything being unorganized and written poorly. Whoa, I can't imagine going through that. I'm sorry you went through a hard time but kudos to you for coming out of it for the better. That school nurse sounds like a wonderful person. My sister took off at age 16 and moved into a 6 feet x 9 feet trailer that could be towed behind a car at a trailer park about a mile from our house. She got a job at McDonald's, one of the ones that was owned by the corporation, not a franchise, and paid her rent from her job. She kept going to high school for a while, but dropped out. She moved up a bit in the corporation and got her get along the way, then went to a community college and transferred to a university over the course of a decade while working in full-time jobs. got her degree and then took more professional jobs. She got laid off and found it harder to get rehired after the dot-com bust in 2001. So she became a real estate agent, then a broker so she could work for herself. She's done really well and just bought the office building she works out of. She told me a good year is $250K. Never married, no kids, always supported herself. I think my dad came back into her life and paid for some of her tuition in community college and her university, but we were white trash so it probably wasn't much, and that's all the help she ever had. She never really had problems with running off and dropping out, just worked hard her whole life. I had a friend do this at 15. He vanished one day without a trace and the police never found him. I've heard different stories from people about him. Supposedly his parents abused him and he didn't think the police would help so he left. Another that he was lured away by some trashy older woman who convinced him she loved him. One story that made some sense was he was gay and scared if his parents found out they'd kill him. So before they found proof he stole some money and hit the road. What really happened? No one knows for sure. But that was almost 25 years ago and he's made contact with people since vanishing. Supposedly he's okay now but his parents died before they ever found out what happened. What a tragic story all around. It's so sad that he may have been abused and forced into that life. And it's sad him nor his parents ever got closure. I left this question open on a tab and struggled. Should I answer? I have now. I started actively leaving when I was 11. Most of my life my mother made excuses to put me elsewhere, as long as no one asked questions. I suppose it was her best effort to protect me. There was so much pain at home. I curled up in the woods and I walked the streets. I trusted strangers and family and was sheltered and abused over the years. Despite committing no crime I was part of the juvenile justice system. I was given away sometimes to places that weren't much better than my parents' home. I never wanted to go back. I ran from some of those places too. I was only 15 when I threw myself into the arms of someone who was almost 4 years older than I was while living here and there. At 16 I was married and at 17 I was a mother. I was a lousy mother but I tried. They all still speak to me and my door is always open. I am lucky to know my grandchildren. I am 55 now and I started leaving at 11. My heart swells when I read some of these posts. Kids should have a safe home. All kids, all people. I might be in the forever fricked up category but I try to be better. I am lucky to have children who are much better people than I am and who have allowed me to be part of their lives. All three have children themselves and my grandchildren are an active part of my life. Thank you for sharing. Not me, but my dad's husband abandoned his family and lived on the streets of Bangkok when he was 14. I don't know the full extent of it because he doesn't talk about it, but his extended family had issues with him because his mother was Chinese and the rest of the family was Thai. They were morally opposed to that so they forced him away from his own parents to live with his father's mother, whom he hated. He was put on the bus to move to his grandmother's but jumped off somewhere in the middle and hoped for the best. After surviving homeless for a few years, he managed to get a restaurant job through a friend of his. He got an apartment and a motorcycle and life was pretty sweet. In his late 30s he decided to move to the US to join a few of his friends who had moved here and were doing well for themselves also in the restaurant industry. Not long after moving here he met my father who was dating a friend of his at the time. They pretty much immediately hit it off and after my dad broke up with the other guy, thank God, they got together and moved in with each other. Just a couple of years ago, they got married. My dad makes enough for the both of them, so he's free to live a very liberated life. At some point, sorry, I don't know the specifics, he reconnected with his family. It was really his grandfather who drove the wedge between everyone and once he passed, the enmity did as well. He's an awesome guy and I'm really happy to have him be a part of my family. I don't think he has a cruel bone in his body and I've never seen my dad so at peace. It's sad how people can treat an innocent child so coldly based on who his parents are. He didn't ask to be born and he didn't get to choose his parents. People are the worst. I was shocked to realize that my whole family was out of the house by age 17 if not sooner. My dad joined the Navy at 17. My mom went to college at 17, as did I. My sister moved to NYC with some older friends at 17. My other sister moved in with her boyfriend at 16 after a fight with my parents. A niece got herself into boarding school at 14. We just can't wait to get out of the house. Okay, I was an upper teen, not very young. Crying conversation with dad on the phone. Hung up. Changed my phone number. And never spoke to them again. I struggled for years in college without their help, and after graduation was a bit of a challenge. It doesn't come up often. My wife knows, none of my friends know. Usually I am able to either lie or change the subject when someone asks me. Mom was very physically and emotionally abusive. I bounced around to various family members and foster care. Finally just bailed at the age of 15. Moved in with a bunch of similarly situations punk kids in a 1-bedroom apartment. 9 of us. Had a much older boyfriend. Dropped out of school and partied way too hard. My teens and 20s were a combination of full-blown awesome and full-blown fricked up. At the age of 29. Went back to school. Now have a master's degree. I'm successful in my field. Happily married with house in a paradise location. And I'm close to my dad and brother. Mom, not so much. Jamie Hyneman from Mythbusters ran from home at age 14-15 and never went back. Now he is a co-host of one of the most popular TV shows. Do you know why he did it? My dad didn't exactly run away, but was abandoned by his father, and his mother was mentally ill. He was on his own at 11. His half-brother eventually gave him a room and a job, and occasionally his mother would be out of the asylum and take care of him and then back in again. His mother's family would give him dinners once a week Sunday, and he got through high school, then college, and met my mom. Married her, continued through university and having kids, went into the army, drafted or just before being drafted, go PhD, etc. His mother's family expected him to end up in jail, so pretty much abandoned him until he made it to high school. I left home at 16. I just wanted to live on my own. My parents are great, no problems at all. My mother was upset and worried for me, but I was determined. This was about 30 years ago. I had been working for several years, had a car, rented a room, graduated early, went to college. I always had 2-3 jobs and was just ready, responsible, capable. I never had one penny of support from my family, but I didn't ask either. Honestly, not sure it could be done so easily now. Supporting yourself on minimum wage while putting yourself through college seems impossible now. I really respect all of you that are doing it now. It was a different world then. I was in 5th grade. I felt stressed out at home by my parents. I just felt tired of everything at home and needed a break. So when I got off the school bus, I decided to play with my friends instead of going home. We played till 7, then everyone left. I didn't feel like going home all of a sudden. Luckily I found a way to improvise. I'd received food in school as part of a school thing where they gave away food for people who signed up, those who were poorer. I'd also found a skateboard in the grass near the playground. Finally, in the apartment building I used to live in, there was a laundry room all the way downstairs. My plan went into effect at about 9 PM. I ate all my crackers from the food pack. Then I walked around the neighborhood in search of a place to sleep. I tried an old playground, but there were a bunch of black cats nearby and it was in public, so I got scared that I'd get kidnapped. I considered going to a friend's house, then I remembered that I'm in 5th grade and that their parents would most likely call the police. I kept walking around, but I noticed someone following me. I started running towards an apartment building so they'd think I was going home. I went all the way downstairs and decided that was a good enough spot to set base. I put down my skateboard, put a soft jacket on it as a pillow, and used my other jacket as a cover. Apart from a few spiders creeping up on me, I slept pretty well. I woke up and on my way to the school bus, my grandma just walked up to me, grabbed my arm, and took me home. Needless to say, I was scared and freaked out. The police officers got my info, gave me a quick talk, and went home. I was scared because I knew that my whole family would ask me questions, and they did. They asked me why I did it and I answered by telling them that I stayed out late to play with my friends and I was scared to come home because I was late. I've done many odd childish things and my mom keeps telling my relatives about it. I'm mostly shy around them now. My mom is a pretty self-absorbed person and my stepdad basically just lives to serve her, even when she's wrong, delusional. When I realized that they were just going to seize any attempt to control every aspect of my life, I packed up and left. I was done with high school and I had been accepted into my choice college. I had everything set up. I stayed with some friends while I got a job. I paid my way through school and did pretty well until the end of my 4th year. I got very depressed and my family quickly tried to begin planning how they were gonna fix my life. I noped out of that situation and moved to New York. The further I moved away from them, the happier I've been. I think they really hate the fact that I don't really need them, and I love that. Left home at 15. 1981. I was a punk rocker and felt that everyone considered me a burden and a pain in the butt. My mom drank a lot and was pretty much done raising kids when my oldest sister was 12. I played in a band, did a lot of drugs, lived on the streets for a while, but a lot of the time crashed in people's garages or on couches when I could. Ended up getting a job on a fishing boat and then later became a carpenter and eventually a contractor. I'm on good terms with my mom and was with my dad until he died. I just had to go find my own way. I left when I was 15 for many reasons. The first couple years I would go around working on farms during harvest season. This paid absolute crap, but it was enough to eat and sometimes they provided shelter. Also learned how to speak Spanish, so that's a plus. I met a girl around 17 and lived with her family for a couple months before that went to crap. Then for a while I thought about joining the army but decided against it. Around 18 I found drugs and met a few more people in the same situation and we just sort of wandered around for a couple years, then wasting time. That went on for a couple years until I eventually straightened out. Now I work at a casino and have a decent apartment. Sorry if this isn't that descriptive, I just don't like talking about the subject that much. I didn't run away, but rather ran to the parent I should have lived with all along. When I was 15 I found out my biological father had only fought for my custody to receive a paycheck from my mom and her husband. I also learned he spent my college fund he won in a large court battle on a new car, house siding, not my college, etc. My biological father and his evil wife paid little attention to me and I had to learn a lot of life lessons the hard way. Finally I saw light and my mother purchased me a plane ticket and I packed my bag with only 100% necessary things because I didn't want to cause suspicion. I told everyone I knew that I was only going to see them for a few weeks. At the end of the last day of school I called a cab and walked out with one bag and never returned. It was exhilarating and terrifying. Taking control of your life at such a young age. Court battles ensued but finally my mother and I had the final word and I haven't spoken to my biological dad since. I am now 21. I am currently paying for my own college. My best friend's brother literally ran away and joined the circus. They were in town and he wanted an adventure. Approached one of the guys asking if they needed any help. They did. So he went home, packed a bag, and left a note for his parents. He was 17 so they didn't head to the next location to talk him out of it. They thought he'd spend a few weeks having an adventure and then get a call to come pick him up. Never happened. They'd see him when the circus came back to town. My mother used to beat me and humiliate me. I ran away one morning and called the free child protection line. The police came to get me and I was placed back home to try and fix the situation. We had to go to family therapy and so on. It didn't work so I ran away again and was placed in an institution. It was crap and at 18 practically ran out the door. Since then I traveled for some years and now I'm studying at uni. I'm very happy I did run away. I would not be as I am now if I had stayed there. I left last August. It's not fun. I'm pregnant now, placing the baby in an open adoption, and planning on getting my GED and going to community college. I know I was stupid. If I had been able to stick it out I would still have the financial support that my parents provided and I would be able to bear the brunt of my mother's craziness as I have been for 17 years. I frequent my sister's account on here and got to see a post about how she's affected. I'm glad I left. I'm much happier now. But I also wish I had been strong enough to stay. I lived in a car for 3 months until a friend's mother offered me a place to stay. That went south so now I live with my boyfriend's parents. I work part-time and spend the rest of it trying to actually get a math education so I can pass the GED with flying colors rather than pass marginally. I will never recommend leaving to anybody, especially without a plan. It's hard. It sucks and things just get harder. Hang in there. It will all be okay. I got a yellow slip in first grade for not having my homework. My mom could not have bared the pain to know that her son had turned to crime, so I ran away before they knew anything. I got my GED, ended up homeless for a bit in Albuquerque, and then got a good paying job and have been fairly okay since then. I didn't have a reason to run away, just wanted to see some places before I had to grow up and go to college. I'd run away from a foster home once, found my blood parents and we'd reconciled. The story is too long to type out though. Sophomore year of high school, one of our friends just up and left. Cell phone off, no more MySpace, Facebook, no way to get a hold of him at all. No one had any idea what happened, not even his parents. They had police looking for him and weren't sure if he was dead, kidnapped or what. About a month later he sent about 6 postcards back to friends and family. He was in St. Louis, but was leaving there. He was letting us know he was okay, but not coming back. There was no details beyond that. About 5 years later, now a junior in college myself, I got the news that he had been found in a car on the side of the road just outside of Chicago, dead of a heroin overdose. I probably shouldn't do this, but my mom had drug problems when I was young. She had lots of problems, but drugs were a primary cause for the way she acted. Aside from the beatings, there were all kinds of abuse. I don't want to go into that, but let's just say life in that home became unbearable. At 14 I moved out of state to a farm run by a friend's parents. They knew about the abuse and were willing to allow me to stay on the farm if I worked in the morning before school and after school doing farm work. They had an old travel trailer sitting out behind the house that was tiny, maybe 10 feet long. The trailer had electricity but no running water. I got up at 4 AM every day to go feed the cattle and horses, water them, clean stalls, basic stuff. I went to high school, and then when I got home I worked another couple hours doing maintenance type work to keep the place from falling apart. I finished high school early and joined the army. I became a medic. The last I saw my mother was 30 plus years ago. My dad bought a Playboy on the day I was born. His plan was to give it to me when I was 18. He didn't foresee internet I guess. So being a kid, I found it when I was about 8 or 9. That's about the same time I started masturbating. I hid it under the bed. I was looking at some sweet 70s boobs before supper with the door closed. My mom poked her head in to tell me dinner was ready and saw me panic and shove it under the bed. She grabbed it out from the bed and looked at it. Then she got a really pee look on her face and left the room without saying anything. I thought it was because she was really mad at me and was going to tell my dad, who would probably get the belt. Now I understand she was probably mad at my dad and wasn't happy about the Playboy from the start, but I didn't know that then. So I bolted out the window barefoot and hauled butt. We lived in the woods. I ran to the neighbor's barn and hid inside. A storm was brewing, so the wind was blowing and thunder and all that. I stayed hidden in the barn for about an hour planning my new life as a vagrant. Mom was probably scared about the storm coming. She drove by shouting my name. She stopped in front of the barn and shouted my name a few times. I stayed hidden until the 4th or 5th time she called my name and decided the jig was up and came out crying for mercy. I didn't get in any trouble, but that might have been the most scared I'd been up until that point. I guess my culture has a really repressive attitude about sex. I was harshly shushed every time I had been curious before that. The next week my mom had the talk with me. Awkward. She told me it was totally normal, but I should never speak of it again. WTF. I told all the kids on the bus. I was born in a not so small city somewhere in Iowa. When I was 5, I lost both my parents in a car accident cause of my father's drinking problem. He and mom were going home from a social event when my father lost control of the steering wheel. My brother and I then lived for 6 years in an orphanage, but after getting fed up with all their rules we ran away to join a traveling carnival. I soon caught the eye of a swordsman, who took me as his assistant, and along with the help of a guy called Rick, swordsman trained me to use a bow and arrow. So I became an entertainer, helping swordsman and Rick perform their tricks, and sometimes using the bow to fly arrows to apples sitting above lions' heads. So yeah, that's my story. I'm a professional archer now. Running away deaf worked out for me. Well, this is what happens when no one puts a serious tag. I ran away at age 10 to become a Pokemon trainer. Never did catch 'em all. On a more serious note, I did get a call late one night from a friend, older, and she somehow roped me into letting this friend of hers crash at my place for the night. I was probably 12 or something. I'm surprised my parents didn't find out till late in the afternoon shortly before I got home from school. Apparently this girl had really strict Mennonite parents, the old order types. My friend that called me was a Mennonite too, but her parents were the new order types, and for whatever reason, she wanted to run away. I do remember one thing she talked about, how her parents didn't let her cut her hair, and so when she decided to run away, she cut her hair really short. So, eventually my dad came home from work, and somehow me, the girl, and my dad all wind up spending time in one of my dad's friends' places, a woman, mind you. And no, it wasn't his girlfriend. He never had one after my mother. I don't really remember much, but eventually, my dad and his friend came to the conclusion that it would be best to call CPS. Now mind you, this was not a decision taken lightly, as my dad really hates CPS. So whatever the girl was going through must have been pretty freaking terrible. I fought with my parents like everyone but didn't run away like a little bee. Took the worst they had to offer. Got a job. Got a place. Got a life. Remembered it all and apply what I learned to my own kids. You know, instead of running away like a little bee. No one has ever more deserved downvotes than you, little bee. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.